I was driven by a fear of loss. Like I had this chip on my shoulders that I was going to prove everybody wrong. I was going to outlearn everybody. I was like 11 years old when my stepdad became disabled. We went from like a middle-class family to like poverty. I was like, oh crap, I got to make money now. My friends like, oh, it's just making fun of me. And I'm like, I'm never going to be poor again in my life.
I want for our audience to get to know your real story.
Yeah.
Tell me, what kind of a home did you grow up in?
Yeah, I grew up in, nobody's ever asked me that. That's interesting. Thank you. Most people just talk to me about sales and persuasion. So I grew up in a broken home. So my biological dad and my mom was 17 when she got pregnant. She was a junior in high school and she had me her senior year. So she had to drop out of high school. And my dad, they had some issues and he left. So they never really got married. So he's like 3 years older than her, 2 or 3 years older. He left. And so my mom got remarried probably 7, 8 years after that, like in her mid-20s. And then I have 4 half-brothers. Love them to death.
A lot of people look at you today and they say, this gentleman is top 50 sales earned commission.
Yeah.
And now you have built a massive empire in terms of sales coaching company, right? You've been in Inc. magazine, fastest growing company. So they look at you and say, well, he speaks perfect English. Of course, sales is easy for him.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to the point where you didn't do sales and you had maybe different dream, different path to go?
Yeah. So I went to school for behavioral science because I was going to become a psychiatrist.
Okay.
But my main passion was baseball. I wanted to go pro. But I believe if I knew what I knew now as far as how the mind works and the mental capacity, that I would have had a much better chance of playing in the major leagues. But because I didn't have the right mindset then, I didn't believe in myself was good enough to get to that level. And I think when you don't believe in yourself that you're good enough to get to a new level, you're not committed to acquiring the skills to get to that level. And so I was in college playing baseball and I got recruited by this company to go out and work in the summers to sell home security. This is like going into my senior year. So I'm like 21, almost 22, and I had just gotten married. The reason why I had to go into sales is because I was like, well, I just got married and I had my first daughter on the way, Cammie. She's 23 now. Got married, was really young, obviously. And I was like, oh crap, I got to make money now. Like literally, I didn't have a choice. So I got recruited, one of those recruiting meetings where they bring everybody in. They basically hire everybody because it's straight commission.
Yeah.
And I had to move up to Boise, Idaho, just barely married, all that kind of stuff happening, like really nervous because I'm like, I don't have any money and I'm married and I have a kid on the way. So there's like all this pressure on me as a young kid. I was just almost about to turn 22. And the first couple of months was really, really bad. In fact, I almost quit because I didn't know how to sell. They gave us a couple books, from sales gurus.
Here's the package.
Here's the script when you knock on the door. And I quickly found out that I didn't like getting rejected all the time. I don't think anybody likes getting rejected, right? And I was like, the way my mind works, because when you go to school for behavioral science, you start to learn how the brain makes decisions. And so most salespeople, like a door would get, slammed in their face. They're like, oh, damn it. And they go to the next door. They don't even think about it. But I was analyzing. I'd be like, well, what did I say or what did I not say that triggered them to react that way? So like, I'm always thinking like, what did I do that caused them to react that way?
Yeah.
And so that's when I started to like tie in like human behavior to sales, like kind of by accident because I had to.
Love that.
And I started like analyzing like, oh, I call it a pattern interrupt now.
Yeah.
Behavioral science, they don't call it a pattern interrupt. There's a scientific term, but it's like you have to get the human being into a different way of thinking, which in psychiatry, they call that, the way I was taught is like everybody has different beliefs, like a belief system based on your childhood, based on how you were raised, maybe where you went to church, who you follow online, on TikTok, favorite influencers. And all that stuff forms your way of thinking. Like your worldview is in that way of thinking, and we call that a frame. So every human being thinks in frames. Like they have this worldview, this is a frame.
Yes.
So when you're knocking on doors, what is the frame of salespeople? Oh, salesperson trying to sell me something. That's the frame. So I have to take them out of that frame. We call that a D-frame, and I have to reframe them into a new way of thinking very quickly, and that's a new frame.
Love it.
So I took what I was learning in school, like those principles, because they don't teach you how to sell, but they teach you how the brain works. So I'm like, how do I integrate this in sales? Because everybody in the office is like, oh, it's just a numbers game. That's normal. You just got to knock on a lot of doors. You're going to get people that are interested. There's old saying like, the more no's you get, you're closer to the yes. But I'm like, I don't really like that. Like, I don't like getting more no's than yeses. Like, why can't I get more yeses than no's? Like, I always would question things. And so as I started to implement some stuff I was learning in in school, and I took some like tonality classes and body language courses and those type of things. Suddenly I started to sell a lot more. Then sold a lot more than that. Then I became the number one salesperson in that company. Then a year later, I was the number one in the entire industry. And then, I got into other industries and did supposedly well.
I want to touch on a couple of things because you said a lot of good stuff here. And I want to make sure that our people don't miss that.
Yeah.
So 21 years old, just got married,
Yeah.
having a maybe kid on the way, right?
Pressure.
For a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
At what point do you say, let me go settle for a salary job? Let me get a job maybe in the field that I'm going to school for.
Yeah.
But at what point did this mind trigger to say, I want to be a professional in this industry? Because you take an personality lessons and all that stuff that nobody does.
I think everybody has what I call a chip on their shoulders from something that's happened to them as a child, later on in life. I don't believe most people activate that chip, though. Think about Tom Brady. What was Tom Brady's chip? One of his chips was he was drafted last in the NFL. So he took that seriously. He became more committed. He became obsessed with becoming the best. Think about every top CEO, every top, heart surgeon, every top, FBI agent, every top, Green Beret. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Every top, nurse or just whatever. They have some type of chip that drives them to acquire more skills, to learn more than everybody else. And for me, that chip was when I was a kid, when my stepdad became disabled. I was like 11 years old, became disabled. We went from like a middle-class family to like poverty because my mom didn't work, right? She stayed-home mom, but had 5 of us there. And so we literally became really poor. And I still remember, this is crazy, going to baseball practice that summer, and parents couldn't afford the Nike cleats that I used to wear, and they had to get the cleats from Walmart, like Void cleats, if you remember Void from Walmart. I still remember being embarrassed. My friends like, oh my, it's just making fun of me. And I'm like, I'm never going to be poor again in my life. So it was like this chip.
And you were 11 years old.
I was 11 years old. See, psychologically, between the ages of 4 and like 12, the way things that happen to you in those age really determine your belief systems the rest of your life, like how you react in relationships, everything from the ages of 4 to 12. That's where it happens. It's crazy. And so just a lot of influence. So many, many years, I was driven by a fear of loss. Like I had this chip on my shoulders that I was going to prove everybody wrong. I was going to outlearn everybody. And that's what I did in sports. Like that's why I became really, really good at sports, because I just practiced more. I was pretty athletic, but there were other people maybe more athletic in my conference and stuff that I played in, but I just outlearned them. I out-practiced them. And that's why I became really, really good. So I took that same drive from sports and just put it into sales, because I had to provide for my daughter on the way and my wife at the time. We're divorced now, but we're still really good friends. And I was driven by that chip, like that fear of loss. And I never want to be poor. Now, it took me many, many years, probably started going to landmark forum courses in my early 30s. So this is just like 10, 12 years ago, to realize that I was driven by a fear of loss, and to flip that switch to be driven by where I want to go. That was a big game changer for me, to have like a business owner mindset and stuff. If I hadn't done that, maybe I wouldn't have started 7th level 5 years ago or whenever it was, 6 years ago.